Have you ever wondered what happens to the human mind when it's pushed to its absolute breaking point? We're about to dive into Stockholm Syndrome, a really baffling psychological puzzle that flips everything we think we know about victims, captors, and the incredible, sometimes bizarre things people do to survive. It seems to make no sense, but we're going to try to make sense of it.
I mean, this is the big question, isn't it? It just feels completely wrong. Why would somebody who's being held against their will, somebody whose life is on the line, end up sympathizing with or even protecting the very person threatening them? To get our heads around this, we've got to go back to where the story all began.
So, picture this. August 1973, Stockholm. 4 bank employees are taken hostage and locked in a vault for 6 agonizing days. But what happened inside that vault just blew everyone's minds. By only day 3, the hostages were actually starting to show sympathy for the robbers. One woman, Kristen Enmark, got on the phone with the Prime Minister of Sweden and famously said she trusted her captors, but she was terrified of the police trying to rescue her. And then, get this, after it was all over, not a single hostage would testify against the robbers. They even started raising money for their legal defense. And just like that, this wild event gave a name to a phenomenon that people had seen before but could never quite explain.
Right? So out of the chaos of that bank vault, this psychological idea was officially born. So let's get into what Stockholm Syndrome actually is, and, just as important, let's clear up some of the myths about what it is not. Okay, at its very core, Stockholm Syndrome is an unconscious survival strategy. Let me repeat that. It is not a conscious choice. It's this deep psychological response where victims start to form an emotional bond with their captors. And a really key thing to understand is that this isn't some formal psychiatric disorder you'd find in a textbook. Think of it more as a name for a powerful pattern of behavior that can pop up when someone is under extreme life-threatening stress.
Now, let's just cut right through the Hollywood version of this, okay? The biggest myth out there is that this is some kind of twisted love story. It's not. It's a bond that's built on pure terror and total dependency. Another thing, it's not universal. Not every single person in that situation experiences it. And maybe the most important reality check, these feelings are not always permanent. A lot of the time, they start to fade once the victim is finally safe.
So, if it's not love, then what in the world is it? How does the human mind actually create this completely paradoxical connection? Let's break down the psychological gears that are turning here. This whole process has a name. It's called trauma bonding. It all starts with just intense life or death fear. Then, the captor does something small, a small act of kindness. Maybe they give the hostage a glass of water or let them use the bathroom. Now, in your everyday life, that's nothing, right? But in this high-stakes survival situation, that tiny gesture feels absolutely monumental. The victim's brain just clings to it, and they start to see their captor not just as a threat, but also as the only person who can keep them alive. And that's where this powerful and very confusing attachment starts to form.
This quote, this is a perfect example of what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. Just try to imagine the mental gymnastics you'd have to do, being totally dependent on the very person who might kill you at any second. To deal with that insane level of stress, the mind just starts to rationalize. It creates a new story, a new narrative, like the one you see here, to make the situation survivable. It's a coping mechanism, plain and simple, for when reality is just too horrifying to face head-on. The thing you've got to grasp here is that fear and affection aren't opposites in this scenario. They can exist at the same time. The fear keeps the victim hyper-aware, watching every move. But any tiny moment of relief creates this powerful sense of safety. So the brain ends up tying the exact same person, the captor, to both mortal terror and the hope for survival. All right, let's go even deeper now. Let's peel back another layer and look at the biology. Because this isn't just a mind game. It's a deep, hardwired response in the brain to an extreme threat. When your life is on the line, the logical, rational part of your brain, it basically gets told to go sit in the corner. Your brain doesn't have time for a pros and cons list. Instead, these ancient primal survival circuits just take the wheel. And this isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's your brain doing exactly what it evolved to do, keep you alive, no matter what. Yeah, think of it like a powerful chemical cocktail is just flooding the brain. You've got stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline cranked up to 11, which makes you laser-focused on the captor's every little move.
Your fear center, the amygdala, is firing on all cylinders, which makes every emotion feel huge. And then comes the paradox. When the captor shows that little bit of kindness, the brain releases oxytocin, yep, the bonding hormone, which cements an attachment to the only source of comfort around. All of this is happening while the rational CEO of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, is basically offline. Now, while this syndrome got its name from that crazy bank robbery, this underlying dynamic of trauma bonding, well, it isn't just for hostage situations. It actually shows up in other deeply disturbing places too. In cases of domestic abuse, you see this exact same devastating cycle. The abuser switches between violence and moments of kindness or apology. This super unpredictable pattern, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's awful, creates an incredibly strong trauma bond. It can make a victim feel completely dependent on their abuser, which is a huge part of why that simple question, why don't they just leave, is so tragically off the mark. The absolutely harrowing stories of survivors like JC Dugard or Elizabeth Smart are real-world examples of this taken to the extreme. Think about it. Total isolation from the world and complete dependency on your captor for every single thing, food, water, any human contact at all. That creates the absolute perfect storm for these survival-based bonds to form. And you can even see this play out on a massive scale. In cults. Cult leaders are often masters of this dynamic. They use isolation, they use group pressure, and they use that same cycle of reward and punishment to create this unwavering loyalty. It's essentially trauma bonding for a whole group of people, making them intensely dependent on the leader. So, when you put it all together, what you see is that Stockholm Syndrome isn't a weakness. It's not a character flaw. It's a powerful, unconscious strategy for survival. It's a response that's driven by the deep psychology of trauma bonding and the raw chemistry of our own brains. At the end of the day, it's a profound testament to the extraordinary lengths the human mind will go to just to endure the unthinkable. And that really leaves us with one final, crucial thought. Instead of judging from the safety of the outside and asking, why didn't they leave? Maybe the better, the more compassionate question we should be asking is this: what incredible things did they do to survive?